Well, hi there, racing fans, and welcome to another edition of Winning Ways, which is going to bring you some very, very interesting topics because Paul's going to be chatting to Dr. Ralph Katzwinkel. And one of the things they're going to be chatting about is bleeding, so it should be damn interesting.
It'll be very interesting. There's a lot of questions I've got from him, and he's done a bit of research into it. So I think a lot of people out there should keep an eye on this part of the program. It's very interesting.
Are all the vets on the same page? The vets in practice in racing, or are they all on the same page as far as medication, bleeding is concerned?
Statutory body, you know, they're governed by obviously the NHRA, who lays down the rules, and they've got a statutory body, and they take things forward.
The Veterinary Association.
That's right. So no, they're all on the same page.
It's going to be very, very interesting because that will open the lid on exactly what's going on as far as your veterinary concerns are. And we're going to move on and have a look at three that you should be following. Well, there we go. Let's kick off with the first of our three to follow. And we're going to Turfentine on the 2nd of December. First race, second race actually. It was the maidens for colts and geldings, and they went to 1,200 meters, 1160 at Turfentine. And it's quite interesting to watch this one. This looks like he's certainly got a future.
Yeah, this is Magic Trip, who unfortunately, you'll see it doesn't get out the gates as quickly as the others. Comes out sideways, very awkward. At this stage, stone lost. This is a horse called Magic Trip from the Jeff Woodruff stable, a trippy who had found support, and the talk was that this was a very decent horse. Straining against a good field, James, and it's quite keen to get back into the race.
Yeah, he seems to be tugging his along and head both sides, and here he is right on the outside of the picture in the Drakenstein colours. Big flashy horse with white socks, kept by Drakenstein, and he's been gelded already, this horse, but he's probably got some real ability because he looks like 1,200, it's not his game.
Yeah, he's lugging across towards you. Your eventual winner's a nice horse too, Alec Laird's horse with Washong Moan on called Al Gueda, who's in the yellow cap and responding to the urgings. This is quite a strong field. There are a lot of horses involved. And here, the favourite, which is a horse we found, Magic Trip, comes up and I thought would go on to win. But the pulling and getting left have taken their toll.
Yeah, he keeps plugging on, and obviously with the run under his belt, big strong horse like this over a bit more ground, he'd probably be well worth putting your Christmas money on.
Yeah, this is a Christmas money horse, definitely. I don't know what price it'll be, but Magic Trip, you've got to be with next time.
Okay, we're going to move on and have a look at Scottsville, Tuesday, the 2nd of December. And it was the same meeting, but earlier at Scottsville on the inside track. Let's go and have a look at your filly, Among Saints. Now, this was the first time there was quite a lot of support for this filly. She obviously shown you a bit.
Yeah, you know, I see she opened 2-1, 9-2. I don't think there was that much support, but what I liked about her, she came out racing, and that I think gave her a big chance. She's beautifully bred by Silvano, and this filly is going to want a trip. She's a really good-looking filly. She runs a very good race, and she's beaten by an Australian import called Fashion Wear, and Anthony said she didn't know what she was doing when she hit the front, and I think she's got a bit of a future.
Well, she's cantering along there in second place. Something goes to the front and he just tucks her in second, and she looks like she's going to go and win a race going through the 400-meter mark, but gets run out of it by a filly that's off the bit in about 6th of Tony Rivelin's Fashion Wear. They won a good race, Australian, and certainly looks like that's got some ability better than what it had shown at this stage. Here, you cantering, and she's off, the other one's off the bit, so it's quite interesting.
Yeah, I think the greenness gets to us, but that, well done to Tony and Mary with Fashion Wear, because I think he's popped up 3 Australian winners, 2 Wanteds and a Mossman, and this one, under the urgings, comes to get us. But just here, I thought we were going to win. Anthony's run up to the leader, he's just punching out, and the rain towards the 200 here, and I thought, I think we're going to win. The rest were getting lashed, And just here, Anthony says, you didn't know what to do. And he changes his stick and says, come on, girl, let's just keep going. But Brandon Arena's got other ideas on the outside and grabs her.
Yeah, just quickened up better at the death. But this filly, she'll go a trip as well. She'll go 2,000 meters, won't she?
No doubt.
Right, we're going to go and have a look at the third one. And this was an interesting horse. 7th of December, first race, maiden plate, 1200 at Scottsville. The Mitchells were in town with a horse with Dennis Dreyer, a Sea Fever. Go and look at this one at this, in the race.
Yeah, Sea Fever runs in the famous Mitchell colours, and these are the same colours that Futura runs in. It's on the outside, a big chestnut by Argonaut, slightly hesitant at the gate, but gets rolling. Sean Cormack, I think he elects to keep on his station, or near enough to his station. And
well, he tucks it in at the back there. It's probably right at the back of the field at this stage. There's only a horse in yellow that's probably behind it. The Royden Turners. But this one is, he's on the outside, out of the picture. And they looked like there were a couple of nice horses in here. Braccetto looked like a good thing. The Puller runner, that's in the light blue.
Must have needed it.
George O'Brien's colours, that needed it.
Carver wins it, James, for Michael Roberts, who's having a wonderful run. But the horse we picked is on the outside. Carver's 4 from the left, your eventual winner. But here you can see that it's quickening up nicely, this horse Sea Fever, on the track, which I think the groundsman's got to be complimented for. You can get a blow in anywhere. Now, Sean asked the big horse Sea Fever to run. Carver's at the front with Brandon Arena, and Corasol's running a tough race too.
Yeah, but watch this horse now. He's just a big, long, striding horse. Gets a smack there and just gets shown the stick to keep him at his job, but really runs on well. And I think he'll win next time, this horse. And certainly over a bit more ground.
Yeah, very nice horse.
But you've got to watch for the follow-through, see if there's betting support, see if everything's right with him, see if they've got him over the right race, right trip. All types of things that come into it in trying to follow these horses. So have a close look at them next time they run. Everything's got to be in place, and if everything's in place, they're worth having a bet on.
No doubt.
Right, we're going to go and have a look at the Settlers Trophy. This is Saturday's big race meeting. I think that Bryn Russell's sponsoring this race day.
Vasco Day. Was it Vasco? Yeah, the previous. It's a Vasco's premier. It's a grade 2 race. And nicely Bryn Russell's got involved, and he's urged people to get out there, come and get the crowds to the races. It's always a good race. If I'm not mistaken, I won this race with Pinero.
Well, the horse that won it last year, we're going to go and have a look at, and you're not mistaken.
Flirtation coming on, and Flirtation has won it. She's tearing them apart in the Commonwealth of a superb win by Ella de Vitoria.
Mother Russia, there's no stopping true class. Early on, and Disco L is also dropping in behind runners as they sort themselves out for an early leader. It's Brown Penny who's acting as the hare, and Brown Penny goes to lead it from Hill 54 racing in second, and No Worries tugging with the rider is settling back in third. Seal is racing a neck away outside of that one. Then it's One Cool Dude and Master of My Fate. In behind them comes Jeppy's Reef about 5 lengths off the lead. Awesome Power is in behind that one. Pater Familiar's further back, and Gifted for Glory races just in behind him. Run for It is settling a dozen lengths off the lead. Disco Owl is in behind that one. Punta Arenas is racing back 1 from last, and Hot Ticket is the trailer, and 15 lengths would cover them. They move to the crossover. They have 1,000 metres left to go, and Brown Penny is out on the lead. Hill 54 racing second. No Worries back at the rail is racing third. Seal is in behind that fourth. One Cool Dude is just in behind the leaders. Master of My Fate is poised to have a crack at them. He's about 4 lengths off them. Awesome Powers along his inside. Jeppy's Reef is just in behind that. Then Gifted for Glory. Pater Familius races 7 lengths off the leader. Disco Owl races further back behind that. Then comes Run for It behind that. Hot Ticket and Punta Arenas. Homeward bound, they're off the false rail. The race is on in earnest now, and Brown Penny quickly challenged by No Worries, who slips through down on the inside rail. Hill 54 is racing wider out. Master of My Fate is now starting to unwind his run as they come down to the final 300. No Worries has picked it up. Master of My Fate now pours under pressure up the outside, and it's Master of My Fate who's come to take the lead. Racing in behind that, One Cool Dude trying to get after them. Pater Familius is kicking on behind that, but Master of My Fate is out in front, and he's clear as they come to the final 100. Master of My Fate from Hill 54 and Pater Familius, and Master of My Fate too good. Hill 54 second, Pater Familius. Hot Ticket flashed from the back of the field to get up for fourth. In behind them, One Cool Dude awesome.
Well, there you go. He's at stud now. Unfortunately, he suffered a career-ending injury, this horse, but this horse is good. And if you look at this field,
yeah, just go through the field. You've got some massive horses behind, from Gold Cup winners to Met winners, Hill 54, as you know. And, you know, Punta Arenas, No Worries, Hot Ticket, Jeppy's Reef, they all came out of this race. But Master of My Fate was a very good-looking horse, or must still be a very good-looking horse. They paid a lot of money for him, and we'll have a lot of interest at stud.
Be very interesting to see how he goes. But as I said, and remember, the Vasco race day, Kenilworth on Saturdays, where you'll see the Premier's Trophy. And if last year's is anything to go by, this year's will be a real good pointer towards the Met this year. But we're going to move on, and we're going to have a look at the Plum of the Week, and this was a good one.
Says take aim, fire, and bulleting home comes to the lead now from Luca Delago in second. Back in third is Goose Green, down the inside Dragon Bay. Bulleting home leads by 2 lengths from Luca Delago in the opening leg of the pick six, and Pierre Stratham once again on the mark. Bulleting home wins it by 2 lengths from Luca Delago. Third Goose Green, then came Crimson Magic, Black Mac, Dragon Bay, Gold Cloud, Flying.
Well, that was the bet of the week. We had picked this up as a horse to follow. He ran 3 seconds in a row, but once he got Striker on him again, you know, Striker had got beaten on him, but he came out with this one and absolutely dawdled in. Even money, 11 to 10 on Interbet. You could have got, this horse started 6 to 10. So, you know, if you don't have an Interbet account, you better get out there and get one. They've got a whole new website now, which is absolutely fantastic. You can bet on the exchange, which is where you get the best prices, or you can bet on the normal bookmaker's site, prices, and then you get tote as well. Interesting, just chatting about the tote. I see that there's a big problem last week with a punter who had a pick six on Summer Cup Day.
Yeah, I listened into with Lyle.
Yeah,
and he flew up to from Cape Town,
and he got about 20% of what he could have won if he'd backed it on the tote. Now, you know, that just...
What amazed me, and I just picked up everything from the interview, and the interview had basically said that he went and put his bet on, and he loves his gambling, went home, celebrated with his family, they worked it out, they did the maths, and he'd getting 400,000 Rand for his percentage. Got there, and he was given 90, and obviously he was shocked, he'd get less than a quarter, and then told by the girl that she was told that morning to quickly put up the signs with betting restrictions. I feel really sorry for that guy.
Well, what interests me is that the marshals have a tote license. So, and why don't they take these bets back on the tote? They want to hold them themselves, okay? And therefore get the benefit, and the tote pools are not getting the benefit, and that's why we strongly support Interbet, because you can go on the site, you can get on the bet on the tote, and get the full tote odds, whatever it is, with no deductions. If you take a swing and it pays R5.60 or 56 or 500 Rand, you get that payout. You don't get any deductions because that is actually a tote agency, which I'm sure marshals have got a tote agency.
Yeah, well, they should have. You know, it gets back to the open bet, which has been the bane of most of the operators around the country.
Legally, how would you stand if you have a tote agency and you take bets which are purportedly meant to be tote bets, and the punter takes a bet on the tote? surely you're liable to pay the tote prices. Doesn't matter what restrictions
You know,
you put
I
on.
really haven't a clue. You'd have to speak to someone like Robert Bloomberg. He might know something about it. But I can say if they gave me a ticket and it says tote in it, I'd demand totes. If they gave me a ticket that says bookmakers, they might have, or Marshall, whoever it was.
The whole question now comes into play as to when this whole rule was made. And it was made many, many, many years ago when the tote agencies weren't that big and people bet the
Yes.
Tsardastrand Tattersall's and all those things.
Yes.
And no one's ever changed it because it actually suits the bookmakers.
Yeah.
You know, I think legally there's, I don't know, at least I've asked you something that you can't answer.
Absolutely,
Okay.
I'm not a legal. I'm not a legal funder. You got to go to the experts, and you know, marshals will have their team, and there are people out there. But I felt sorry for the guy.
Well, so does everyone that was involved. Anyone that's been involved in that situation wouldn't find that pretty. But let's move on, and we're going to have a look at current affairs.
Welcome to another edition of Current Affairs. We had two big races down in Cape Town. I was fortunate to be down there to watch them both, and those are the only two around the country, James, and that's where we are, two good races.
Whew, they were fantastic races. You know, when you step out these type of fillies. And the Southern Cross Stakes, Alboran Sea, she was the 2-year-old. And then she came up against Bassett, Walter's
Group 1,
Flyer. You know?
I actually raced with Walter, and Walter said to me, I can give this horse a race, there's a headwind up, and she'd probably need an extra furlong, but she's very good and she's getting better. And she had won the Group 1 in
the Mercury.
Yeah, she won the Mercury Clare, which is a very good filly. And I thought Alboran Sea, who had also won a Group 1, would beat her. And so did the public.
Well, absolutely. But if you had a close look at this filly Fly By Night, she won 1,000 last time and a very good 1,000. And she came out and did it again. Let's go and have a look at them.
Further back, Lana Falcon, Rosier, and behind that, Priceless Jewel with 500 metres left to go. Alboran sees the one in front. She leads the way a length and a half. Racing in second, we got Fly By Night who's tracking her. Then we find Savannah Song, the Witch Doctor. Next it's Barricade who's coming up the middle. Deeper out we got Aria as they enter the final 200. Alboran Sea being held together in front, and Fly By Night is now out after her to come and make a race of it. Alboran Sea with 100 metres left to go, but Fly By Night is looming up. She draws up and she draws to the lead close home, and Fly By Night beats Alboran Sea. Then came Savannah Song and Lana Falcon.
Well, there we go. Fly By Night. What a great ride by Bernard Faydurb. He elected to follow the favourite Alboran Sea, and I know Michael de Kock has said subsequent to the race that it's very hard to go out and be the hare and make the donkey work, James, and Alboran Sea tried to run them off their feet.
Yeah, at the end of the day, when you have a headwind like that and you covered up, it's going to make a difference. But let's take nothing away from this filly. She's 180,000 rand by. Mike Bass is the master of jet masters.
No doubt. Him and Marsh Shirtliff, that's and Bryn Wrestle as well. Now they're always looking for it, and they had Marcus and Ingrid as partners in this horse.
Yeah. What is interesting is that the jet masters always seem to take a bit of time. They come a bit later. And Bass, he's patient. You know, he doesn't have many things going on in that head of his, except you know, what maybe is going on with the golf game, and he's got a team there.
I believe you're going down next week. I know you're going to be with him. And I was speaking to Marsh and Carol, and Marsh says that from his balcony to his plunge pool, he can make the jump at his age. And Carol said it's impossible. I want you to go down there. If it does happen, would you film it, please?
I hope there's no water in the swimming pool.
No, there's water. There's water. If there's no water there, James will be eating soup for the rest of his life.
Would that be get rid of him?
Can you imagine now Walter at his age is going to make this jump?
Carol behind us, I think.
Yeah, Carol's in our team. But Walter's adamant he can make this jump. Even Marky, his son, said he'd probably make it, but his dad wouldn't. So when you're down there, why don't you just have a look at the jump distance and let us know.
One thing about Walter is that I've had few bets with him in the past. It's very hard to win a bet off if he says he can do something, because he's quite determined.
Yeah, he's quite determined.
He's very determined. He's got that determined left-hand swing of his with the in-to-out.
Well done to him, and well done to the USDers, Derek Brookman, of course, Bryn Wrestle, and Marsh Shirtliff. Marsh was quite confident too that he could turn it. They've got their horse to win. And who bred it, James? This,
Patricia Devine.
That's right.
Pat Devine.
Pat Devine, well done to them.
So she's Jetmaster, and it was out of a model man mare, so it's got 100% South African stamp of approval blood. You know, it's incredible. That's all our pedigrees coming through there.
That's right.
And well done to them.
Yeah.
Let's go and have
the next one coming. Sorry to interrupt you, James, but this was what everyone was waiting for. And obviously a lot, we lost a lot when Cold as Ice was taken out. And she looks to be a very good filly. I watched them come out in parade, both very relaxed fillies, very nice fillies. And what would have been, or could have been a contest, lost a bit of its gloss.
Well, yeah. It's interesting where you stand, in which camp you stand. My opinion has always been, and I remember having this discussion on the show with one of our guests the one day, because they said that Momju shouldn't have been South African 2-year-old of the year. Yeah. 2-year-old filly of the year. Well, as I said to him, who would you rather end at the end of their 3-year-old career, Momju or any of the other protagonists? You'd rather end this one?
At this stage, you know, still got to take on some good horses, but I agree with you, she's a superstar. But what was interesting for me, James, and a lot of people spoke to me about it, and was that the filly, it was a very laid-back filly, which is Cold as Ice, came out the gate and through the rider, through Bernard, who was obviously agitated with, and it cantered around. I was even speaking to Ravon Smith afterwards, and he was saying to me, yeah, it just cantered around, and they had a group of guys waiting for it, and it cantered into the paddock. I believe then Joey and his clients got together and said, no, let's take it out. A couple of guys I spoke to who said, if they'd wanted to run it, they should have run it, because a horse losing the shoe delays the start more. A false start delays it more. And a Group 1, you get one chance at the Group 1 in this age group. I'd like to have seen her go back, but the stable made their call, and I can live with that. What's your take?
It reminded me of Doug Campbell going to Johannesburg to win the Revlon Fillies Guineas. It was the biggest race around, and she ran around
at a quicker pace.
At a quicker pace. Yeah. Got in the pens and end up winning. So you know,
James, for my money, I'd have sent it back because we got beat on an excuse. Said, I shouldn't have run this. You know, I would have had an out. But they're connections. They're great sports, and they decided we're not going to take them on, and the public lost out on what could have been a great race. But having said that, let's compliment Majbu.
Yeah, she's a champion. There's no doubt. Let's go and pick her up at the start. This is a different class.
Cuvee Brute. They complete the lineup. We set and ready to go. All clear. Racing to a perfect beginning in the Aventura Estate Cape Fillies Guineas. In Nora, the quickest away up the outside, we got Majmu, who's pushing past runners to go and set up handy. Grey Light is also on the move, and there goes a Tarb off to the lead to set the pace as they head past the 1200. It's a Tarb that shows the way. In second, we got Grey Light is showing up ahead on the outside of Majmu. A length and a half away comes Inara. Half back the outside, it's Jet Set Go. Then a length and a half towards the inside, where we find Double Whammy, who's sitting on the rail, and she's sitting 8 lengths off the leader. Cuvee Brute is pushing past her on the outside. Jeweler's Joy, Sunset Trip, they're racing at the end of the line, and they're sitting a dozen lengths off that leader as they head towards the middle of the bend. 800 metres left to go, and a Tarb is the one in front. Grey Light is in second. Majmu is sitting just a length and a half off the early leader. Next in running, we got Inara racing on the inside of Jet Set Go, Double Whammy. Then comes Cuvee Brute behind that Sunset Trip. Jeweler's Joy whipped them in as they flatten for the run to the judge. Aventura Estate Cape Fillies Guineas, 450 metres left to go. Majmu can wait no longer. She comes forward and hits the front, and she kicks for home. Double Whammy on the rail is out after her. A Tab who's done the donkey work has cried enough in Nara. Jet Set Go, he's starting to lift on the outside. 200 meters left to go, but Majmu says, come and catch me if you can. She's already kicked 3, 4, 5 lengths clear of the balance, and she's gearing down to victory. Majmu, hands and heels, wins it from in second in Nara. Double Whammy and Jet Set Go.
Yeah, we're watching a superstar in action. The word on the ground is there's a distinct possibility she could have her last run in this country in the Met or the Metropolitan. And
funny enough, I chatted to Mike this morning about her, and he says he's got 3 options. And he says he really is leaving it open. She's gone back to Joburg.
yeah,
He can go back for the Paddock Stakes. He thinks that might be a bit quick for her.
yes,
He can go for the Met,
yes,
which he might do, or he's going to stay here for the Triple Crown and run the Triple Crown in Johannesburg. But she will go overseas, and he confirmed what we all thought by watching her, that she's group material overseas,
yes,
and if everything falls into place, she'd be that good. If you take a line through Double Whammy, got beaten by Cold as Ice a length and a quarter last time over 1400. This filly beat Double Whammy 3 lengths gearing down. So you would still believe Majmu's the best around.
Well, she's proven it, and she's done it. She should be unbeaten. She was very unfortunate when she lost, and she really is a very good filly. Right, what else we got, James? I have some news, which is not good news, obviously, and that is that Chad Schofield has fractured his arms. He fell off in Geelong. And his family are flying out from Sydney to see him. He's fine, he's compass maintenance, everything's tidy, but he has fractured his arms.
Yeah, fractured.
He's unlucky.
Yeah, unlucky, but it shows you if you want to go to Geelong, that's what happens, you know. Geelong's one of those places you try and stay well away from.
This is a Geelong way away.
It's a very Geelong way away. But shame, condolences to the Morwing family on their sad loss.
Yeah, absolute condolences.
So tragedy.
To them.
But let's go and have a look at what we've got coming up. And obviously it's coming to Dubai World Cup time again, and our normal guy, Phil Giorgio, puts it together with Let's Go Travel. And if any of you have been on this trip, you'll know that this is the trip of a lifetime. You get the tour, you get the tickets, you get the Movenpick, 5-star Movenpick hotel for 6 nights, breakfast, the race day tickets. They're next door to the parade ring, you know, the whole thing. And we'll start pushing it along for them, because this is a trip, if you're a racing fan, you want to get on. And he can only take a certain amount of people. He's always booked up long before the time.
I'm just looking at the photograph that he's put with it, and there's some celebrities that have gone out there, and I'm just looking at the likes of Marsh, and there's Mark de Kock, there's Roy Moodley, there's Ivan Snowman. He's got a whole gang. Really, it's a great trip. And
Mumsy's there with Roy.
Oh, Mumsy doesn't miss a trip.
Yeah, she doesn't miss a trip.
Mumsy's there as well. There's Gary Westwater, riding a wooden horse like they've got at the academy.
Well, but Gary Westwater's got it in the genes.
Yeah, he's got it in the genes.
He's a good rider, Gary.
Yeah,
you know, very good rider.
There we go. Nice to see.
Nice to have him around. Dubai World Cup. We're going to be chatting to Ralph Katzwinkel in Your Call, and Laf will be answering him the questions. Should be fun.
Harry Sun's running on strongly towards the inside. Harry Sun and Light the Lights. Anjol hard up on the outside. Anjol has his head in front. Harry Sun's coming home hard. Jay is absolutely flying. Maybe Harry Sun in a thriller.
Right, welcome to another edition of Your Call. Very interesting one as well, because I've got veterinary surgeon Dr. Ralph Katzwinkel to come and just clear up a couple of issues that have been bugging a few people in the industry. And we're going to be talking about bleeding, epistaxis, ERPH, and the suspensions that go with it. Ralph, thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks, Paul.
Right, I want to let people know that I asked you to look into it for me. I haven't thrown you in the deep end. I wanted you to do a little bit of research, because you know more about it than I do. But the rule on, let's just first clarify the difference between epistaxis and ERPH?
Epistaxis, by definition, is bleeding from the nostril, either one or both. So it's outward hemorrhage. And ERPH has been defined as blood evident in the trachea after an endoscopic examination, which originates from the lung. Okay, so that, I think, there is a straight difference, as Ralph has just cleared up for us. So when you hear of ERPH, you hear it in the trachea, and epistaxis when they bleed. So we've got that right now. What is the rule in this country on epistaxis? Well, in my research now, I actually looked at the Jockey Club rules, and I can't find a rule related to epistaxis. What I did find is on the web page there is a recommendation. And
just a recommendation?
Just a recommendation.
That's very strange, because if you've got a rule, they've got to fine you with a rule or hit you with a rule if they suspend your horse. Now in this country it's 3 months. So guys will come along and say, well, listen, so they haven't got a rule. Firstly, they recommend that we get 3 months and it gets passed. But for a rule to be put in place, you get guidelines, you get recommendations, you have to go through a couple of bodies. And the first body is a subcommittee. I found out that if you're going to change a rule anywhere in the country, you go to a subcommittee. The subcommittee then sits and discusses it and uses a bit of expertise. They then pass it on to the board, which entails the 3 operators, the RA, and the executive members. And they're an intelligent bunch, and that's how rules are passed. Now this hasn't got to them by the look of things.
No. So on the website, if you look under veterinary and welfare, there is a reference to epistaxis, which is a recommendation, and it's been applied as a rule.
But it's not a rule.
But it's not a rule.
That's a little awkward. So for years and years, I had a filly just for the season bleed. She won at 4 to 10. She wasn't scoped. They found a trickle, and the horse wasn't scoped. And they said, "No, give me 3 months." To contest it would have cost me 50 grand. And when you've got a horse going for those races, you think, "Sure, is it worth it?" But there was no rule.
Yeah. As you say, the concern I have is that a recommendation doesn't follow the process that a rule would have to follow to achieve something for the betterment of racing. And I think I don't want to downplay the fact that ERPH, exercise-induced pulmonary hemorrhage, is a condition worldwide in horses, in racing. So if you race, you're going to have this condition. It's so prevalent that 85 to even 100% of horses will bleed, have ERPH at some stage of the racing career. So how we deal with it for the best interests of the horse and the riders is what we need to look at.
We've got a situation in South Africa where there's a stigma about bleeding, and if a trainer can get out of the ring without, if his horse is bleeding, he's not going to announce his horse is bleed because he's going to be hit for 3 months. If a horse bleeds during the week, he's not going to say a word about it. The stat you've just said is an incredible stat. So why don't they treat bleeding as if it was a leg injury or a back injury or a heart attack? These are major things that vets deal with, and we know we can get the complete picture by using a vet to determine the severity. When it comes to bleeding, it's a painting with a broad brush.
Yeah, that is really the point I think I'm coming from, is that we need to canvass the Jockey Club or NHRA and people in racing to have a relook at this. There's nothing in the literature that I can find, and I've done
What have you researched of? What are you, scientific literature?
The scientific literature does not support or give any evidence of how long a horse should have off after bleeding, an episode of ERPH. There's no reference. So the basis on the 3 months, this needs to be explained, or we need to ask the NHRA to present their reasoning behind it. So I think what we've got to really look at is to say, is it a condition that occurs commonly? Yes, we do know it occurs commonly. It mustn't be swept under the carpet. I agree with you. The current rule makes it stigmatizes it. So we as vets and everybody covers up. So we don't see the extent of the problem. Horses train, and they may bleed in their training, and they're not identified, and they race 3 or 4 days later.
So that proves it's just, they're only waiting for race day, and that's a small part of the picture.
Yeah. I think what we've also got to realize is that epistaxis, the visible blood at the nostril, is not a direct correlation of EIPH, exercise-induced pulmonary hemorrhage.
Okay, one question I'll ask you, Ralph, and others. When you get the epistaxis, there's visible blood. Does it mean it's a severe bleed?
No. That is a false assumption. I've had my own filly, same jurisdiction, ran and won in the Group 1 on Gold Cup Day. Rob gave me an option to scope her, so we brought this video.
What was the epistaxis?
There was a slight bleed on the nostril, so Rob said, do you want to scope her? So Sean, one of my vets, brought the scope down, the video scope. She was a grade 1, but had epistaxis. So, you know, what we see is there's an indirect correlation. To assume that visible blood at the nostril is an indication of a severe bleed is false.
Completely false.
False.
Yeah, that's people say, "Woof, you bled, it's severe. It's come out the nostrils. It's just come gushing forward," and because of that. Now, I know when you were looking at things, I took a couple of points from you. There's no literature.
No literature that supports any time off, actually.
And this, at the centre of all this, Ralph, has got to be the safety of the horse and the rider.
Absolutely, and I don't, you know, it's not for me to sit here and make recommendations of what it should be. That's going to be in the same situation as the recommendation that's currently on the Jockey Club website. A well-informed subcommittee needs to come to the right conclusion. And, you know, the fact that there's no literature doesn't mean that horses don't need a break. Inflammation is part of the reasons why horses will possibly bleed.
Can you just take people back to, there are lay people watching this, and there are people who are deeply involved in the industry. What causes bleeding? In a nutshell.
Okay, no, all right. So the lung alveoli has got very small capillaries in them, and that's where the transfer of oxygen from the air to the blood takes place. And what the theories are is that the pulmonary artery blood pressure in a horse, when they start racing and the heart rate goes up to a maximum of 240 beats per minute, the blood pressure in that pulmonary artery reaches 75 to 100 millimeters mercury. All other species, it only goes to 35 maximum. So we're looking at a 3 times higher pulmonary pressure in the pulmonary artery in a horse. Now, we don't know why, but that's what happens. Now, some of these now bleed. So the theory is that the elevated blood pressure in the pulmonary artery with the negative pressure in the airway and sucking in air into the lung causes a rupture of the little capillaries. And the rupture occurs predominantly in the caudal dorsal. So at the back under the saddle. Think about it, at the back of the saddle, in that region of the lung. That's where the bleeding occurs. And then it takes a little while to filter from that point into the trachea and then out.
What's the longest period of time have they found that a horse can show signs?
Up to 20 hours after.
20 hours can show signs. 20 hours
can show signs. And generally it's between 30 and 90 minutes after exertion.
And then they do
now,
it.
EIPH is not common. It occurs in humans, occurs in racing camels and racing greyhounds. So it's a condition associated with exertion.
Yes. Everything to do, and the heart rates, they get up to
240, and the acceleration is you're looking at from the starting pens about 17 meters per second. So it's an extreme exertion. Now, quite a lot of work has been done on trying to find the possible causes, and so the pulmonary artery pressure is one. The other one that is getting a lot of support now in the scientific literature is the actual locomotion of the horse, the concussion of the front legs with the racing surface. So those forces where the front legs hit the ground are transmitted up the leg, through the scapula, into the thorax, and they're concentrated in the caudal dorsal area of the lung.
The back of the lung.
Yes. So think of it like playing with a whip. You have a large action with your hand to get this whip to work, and then it concertinas down to the tip, and there's your great force, and you get that crack of that whip. Now, the same is happening in the thorax to the point of the caudal thin portion of the lung. Then there's another theory, an hypothesis that's been put forward quite recently in the Equine Vet Journal by a renowned researcher, is Professor Cook. His theory is that if you look at a feral horse and you take a group of feral horses and you make them exert themselves.
Which they did.
Which they did with helicopters.
Yes.
None of them bleed. And the question is why? Why do they not bleed?
So they were chased with these helicopters.
Yeah,
and
none of them bled.
Recorded.
Okay. So his theory is, his hypothesis is that horses need to close their mouth and create a negative pressure in the oral cavity to suck down the soft palate and tissues in the back of the upper airway to allow the movement of air.
So all there is nasal.
A horse is an obligatory nasal breather. Must breathe through the nose. Must breathe through the nose. As soon as they breathe through the mouth, you have a disaster.
The choking up, he's suggesting, is caused when the mouth opens?
Yeah, when the mouth opens. So his belief...
We've got to have a bit.
Well, his big drive is to have bitless bridles, which we know we're not going to do. But so any opening of the mouth creates salivating. It promotes the reflexes of eating. It has the nerves in the mouth that stimulate a different reflex. And a horse should not swallow while racing.
Yes.
You don't want them to swallow.
Sure.
And if everything is in a malaligned position while racing and they do have to swallow, they battle to correct it. And that's often when the displacement occurs. So if you get your soft tissue in the back of your airway constricted with the negative effect of breathing, the suction effect of breathing, it promotes bleeding. And his theory is that is a contributing reason for bleeders.
That's very interesting. Just getting back to the helicopter chasing these brumbies or these feral horses, is there anything to do with putting a saddle and a jockey on that could contribute? Yeah,
look, I haven't found that in the literature. And there was one reference to maybe the girth playing a role.
Yes.
Now, horses have a thoraco-abdominal respiration. So the thorax and the abdomen have to expand and contract in breathing. And there's a direct link between the action of a horse and breathing. So when the horse lands, it breathes out. When a horse floats in the gallop, it breathes in. So there's a link between breathing and locomotion. But there's no literature to support that the saddle or the rider is affecting that.
Okay. I just want to touch on the time that they suggest we should suspend horses for 3 months. Now, there's, as you initially stated, there's no reason, scientific reason, that a horse should have that type of time. How long does it take a lung to recover?
Well, the opinions are that it's very quick.
Very quick.
The lung is extremely vascular. It has, in a very crude way, it's got two plumbing systems.
Yes.
One system, blood supply, that supplies the tissue of the lung with nutrients and oxygen. And then the other important one, which is the right side of your heart, the right side of the pump of the heart, pumps deoxygenated blood to the lung where the transfer of oxygen takes place.
Okay.
And then it goes back to the left side and goes to the body. Now, there's a theory that when inflammation occurs in the lung and there's a bleed, there's a rapid healing process with neovascularization, which means new blood vessels.
So it heals quickly?
It heals very quickly.
So the 3 months, by my reckoning, is absurd. I've raced in different jurisdictions around the world, and I've chatted to Michael de Kock about it, just to name him. And when he reported that Shay had bled, they were quite surprised that he came to them. And they said, oh, no, that's fine, thank you. And he could have raced it the next day. There's no rule there across that part of the world where you have to say, oh, am I getting a suspension? Is there any type of time? Some countries have America. I know you just have to gallop back under a certain time to prove you're fine. But now we're sitting here in this country where we are not allowed to export our horses. The rest of the world basically doesn't want us. We have to use these protocols to travel right around the world. Yet we have to listen to their systems to tell us how to run our bleeding policy.
Yeah. Look, I think something has to be done about the current process, all right, and the current, let's say, no rule application. Look, I mean, I'm sitting with a situation with this filly that I've got to share in the same jurisdiction. She's missed out now on the Summer Cup Day, 400,000 Group 2, and she could have been running against Majmu in the Group 1, $1 million race. Now, you know,
is it right?
Is it right? You know, it was a grade 1. It's a bleed that we commonly see in training.
The grade 1 bleed, not the race.
The grade 1 bleed.
Not the race.
Yeah,
Right,
so,
let's just have a break for a moment. Let's look at our sponsors for 1 second. We'll be back with Ralph. Here we go. Here are the winners last week. Royal Security Power and Fashion Wear. Well done. They were the successful graduates from Magic Million in this past week. Right, back with Ralph. We've got the sponsors out of the way. I can see it, and people can't accuse you of saying, well, you've got a good horse and you're fighting a cause. You're not. No. You know, it's happened to most people, and a lot of top horses have had the situation. But if the Jockey Club are going to have a strict rule or a strict recommendation in place, not a rule that I can find, or you, and they don't monitor what happens in the gallops at home.
That is my concern. You know, I think we have to find a way of looking at the condition in all aspects of training and racing. So the solution should be encompassing of that. I don't feel that the ban with epistaxis at the moment, or the suspension with epistaxis at the moment, actually does the industry any service.
No, it doesn't.
We need to be better than that. We need to have a better system.
If we had a system in place where bleeding was handled properly, people didn't have the stigma about, I better keep it quiet because, well, I've told my owner, my horse bled. You know, owners get suicidal when they hear that, and it's so common in horses. If we had a proper situation in place, or a recommendation in place where they said, listen, if you bleed, we will scope it and make a week or 2 week, just depending, because we know things heal, you'd find, Ralph, that people would be more open about it. There wouldn't be this problem, and they'd treat it the same way as they would a horse wrapping his ankle.
You see, my view is that we're entrusted, you as a trainer and myself as a racing vet, we're entrusted with the well-being of the horse for every other condition.
Yes.
And we make decisions, fractured legs, joints, illnesses, viruses, colics, major surgeries. You know, Jet Explorer, he had a major fracture of the upper and lower jaw. He was back racing 3.5 months later.
Yeah.
You know, so he had to get fit for the race. So he was back in work probably 6 weeks later.
Yeah.
So it just shows you how resilient the body is. And what I'm getting to is that we're entrusted with the decision of the well-being of the horse and the rider for all these other conditions. We should be given that opportunity with bleeders.
Yes.
Bleeding is a condition with racing. It's worldwide. We're not going to get rid of it. It's been there for 300 years. We're not going to cure it overnight. There's not going to be, it's a multifactorial thing, and it's genetic. We must realize that work has been done in this country. FAF in 1950 did a research, and the incidence was 1.2%. Wiedemann did research between 1986 and 2003. The incidence is now 2.1% of epistaxis, not EIPH.
Yes.
So if we...
It's going up.
It's going up. So we're not selecting in our breeding against it. We breed off speed. Speed, speed, speed.
Correct.
No selection against that. So there may be countries like Germany who's selecting against bleeding, and they have a lower incidence. So there's definitely an opportunity in our breeding to look at that. But I don't think that's practical. I don't think we've lost that cause.
Would you say, Ralph, homeopathic help is a big industry today?
Massive. And, you know, again, what we're sitting with is a no drug rule.
Yeah.
Okay, when you race under no drug rule, in other words, drug-free on race day, it opens itself to using homeopathic preparations in an attempt to help bleeding.
Help the horse.
And there's no scientific support for that. So, you know, this is where the Salix issue comes in, the furosemide.
Let's talk about Salix. For those of you who don't know, Salix, furosemide, Lasix, a lot of people would call it Lasix. It's called Salix, it's furosemide. Tell us what it does. What is it?
Well, furosemide, here's a little bottle. This is the bottle it comes in. It's 50 milligram per mil, and it's a 10 mil bottle. An expensive product, but furosemide has been shown to reduce the blood pressure in the pulmonary artery by 10 to 15 millimeters mercury. So instead of sitting at 100, it'll drop it to 85.
We in South Africa did tests to try and find out how these Lasix problems worked, and we scoped horses, Ralph, after races, and there was a South African vet, and I think three major vets came out to do their research, and they found such a huge percent were bleeding. But then they did a big test. I think you've got the literature on horses that were given Lasix. Now, Now, though it's conclusive that it decreases ERPH.
Yeah.
And
okay. This study was done at the Vaal, and it was Hinchcliffe, Australian, Melbourne University, top authority on ERPH.
Yes.
And then Morley from Colorado and Alan Guthrie from Waterford. And they worked, I think they raced horses 2 weeks apart.
Yes.
And the trial consisted of about 150 or so horses. And they used one bottle, 500 milligram of Salix. Now that's a high dose, but that's the dose they use in America. 450 to 500 milligram of Salix was given 4 hours before on the course, and then the horses were raced. And the research conducted in this country with our racing conditions, so everything was suited, similar to what we practice in this country. Bleeding was reduced by 1 grade.
So,
as a result.
So it had a beneficial effect.
Absolutely. Conclusive evidence is
there are people who out there, rightly or wrongly, say that when you're giving Lasix or furosemide, you are masking other medications. Yeah. Now, this was researched deeply. What is the outcome there? Yeah. Tobin, I think it was.
Yeah, Tobin, Professor Tobin in the 80s disproved that. Yes. That's not the case.
He disproved all claims.
So drug detection in blood and in urine is not affected by Salix.
No effect. So those people who say, well, you'll use Lasix, you know, and there are the green people who want to have drug-free racing, but drug-free racing comes back to the problem of these horses bleeding terribly.
Yeah. You see, in the anti-racing lobby, which is getting stronger, and I think we have to be aware of that, and racing needs to be seen to be proactive. That's what I would like to see. We need to be seen to be proactive. We're not going to fix problems overnight. We're not going to cure bleeding, but we've got to be seen to be proactive. So furosemide has been shown in America to be effective. Now, I would like to see it introduced. There's no doubt about it. As a veterinarian, there's enough supporting evidence that
helps the horse.
It helps the horse. So I think if one has to answer the anti-racing lobby and say, well, we are proactive, we're doing something, and that should be considered. Yes, maybe one should have 2 races in a race meeting and allocate that to horses that are treated with Salix.
I see what you mean. Say, listen, we're going to have 2 races where horses are being treated.
Correct.
And
those for the ones that we know are bleeders. Enter them.
Enter them. You can enter them for that. And if you're a non-bleeder, you can enter, but you're going to be treated with Lasix. You would like to see something like that introduced on a small scale to start.
We will learn from that.
Yes.
You know, it's like introducing the polytrack. I mean, we're learning.
Yes,
it's a fundamental change. It's changing the form. It's changing everything. But we've made the decision. We've put the poly in. We're going with it. We should try it.
Why can't South Africa be innovators? You know, Dr. Ali Bakr with cricket was a great innovator. It wasn't for him, we wouldn't have all these technologies in place as quickly as we did. And here we've got a situation where there are going to be people against Lasix because they've got this preconceived idea that it's going to cheat.
Yeah. You see, Paul, you know, I abide by this and I agree with the drug-free. But what we mustn't forget is that the scenario where, and I make this, I've used this example many times. The horse is favourite for the July. He runs his best races in the prep to the July. Comes 10 days or a week out from the July, he has a little niggle, be it a joint or be it a knee or be it an EIPH or whatever. Now, I know we can help him and get him back to his best. Now, should you run this horse without help and he runs below par and affects the betting public because he now runs a poor race?
And the breeding book.
Or should you get him to his best? And that's my philosophy, is I want to see horses racing at their best. Not on drugs,
you know,
but with the help of...
The critic's going to say you can mask an injury in the leg and that by using treatments that fall within the excretion time. How would you respond to that?
I think that's being looked at, rightly so, at the moment. Intra-articulars are being looked at, and maybe the time limit between the intra-articular and race day should be investigated, or there might be a withdrawal period. But, you know, Paul, I see the condition, let's say, in a fetlock or in a knee, in a carpus, get to a point where it's affecting the horse, and by doing something about it, you're actually preventing that continuous damage. Okay. Now, and that's what I want to see with EIPH. I want to see the trainers report their problem, address the problem, and help the problem.
Yes.
We're not going to cure them. We're going to deal with them. We're going to manage them. So I might recommend to a trainer when I've scoped the horse, don't run this horse, don't exercise him for 2 weeks.
Yes.
Before he comes back to racing, I want to scope him again after a gallop. We've done that with one of your horses.
Yeah, no, it has. We have to stay on top of it. I want to ask you about mortality. Now, there are records out there looking at the mortality of racehorses through different problems, and the problems can be from fracturing a leg, from breaking down so severely, from a heart attack, and from bleeding. Now, my argument is the others are way, way ahead.
Yeah, I agree. The figures I could get in the UK, they did some research on the one paper of 2000 to 2007. There were 13 deaths out of something like 14,000 starts.
Yeah.
So it's 0.08%. I think the NHRA has that data. They should present that data, and then try and identify from that data how many are associated with EIPH. It is a risk. I think we are in racing. The Jockey Club administers racing or controls racing. We are all in racing. So we choose to race. Horses are there to race. If we put them in the paddock, they're not going to bleed and they're going to break a leg.
Yeah.
But the fact that we're racing, there are inherent risks. Now, we minimize those risks. We have some of the best training tracks in the world. We have the best race tracks in the world. So our stats, I would believe, are better than most countries in the world, particularly America, for catastrophic failures. But if you look at mortality or death on the race course or closely associated after a race, most commonly fracture.
Yeah.
Okay, spinal, limb, heart attack, and then it can occur that a horse can bleed.
I've never seen a horse down from bleeding.
Well, I've asked jockeys, various jockeys and trainers who've been in racing 30, 40, 50 years, and the answer was, the question was, how many times have you seen a horse die of EIPH or bleeding? And it's either 0 or 1.
Yeah, I've
Now,
never seen it.
That's not scientific.
Yes.
Ask the NHRA for those figures. How many horses die on the racetrack? How many are associated with bleeding? And that will give us an idea of how severe that problem is. There's no doubt that it occurs, but the incidence of a horse breaking a leg and a horse going down as a result of a fracture is much higher than bleeding.
Yeah. Rob, before we wrap this up, there's a couple of points I want to put out. We've got a situation here, a horse runs and it gets a little trickle or whatever, and you basically have to go and do everything. You have to get your vet, and they haven't got a scope on the course here. You've got to phone your vet, and you've got 4 hours. So you run the last race at 10 o'clock. You've got to get hold of your vet and say, listen, I need you to scope this horse to prove that I don't get that he's hit a membrane, and that's wrong. That, in my opinion, I think should be done here, should be done quietly, and should be, if it's bled, the suspension, which I'm going to come back to you about. Do you think we should have a 3-month suspension?
Paul, the ideal is to scope horses. Yeah, ideally, maybe every horse should be scoped, but that's not practical.
Yeah.
So if you're going to say, listen, the horse that exhibits epistaxis should be scoped, that would be the right way to go. It should be graded on a grading that is used internationally, and based on that grading, you should then recommend something. And I don't want to be the one that prescribes that, but the recommendation should be made.
Well, at this stage, epistaxis falls underneath suspensions as a recommendation, as a guideline. It's not a rule.
No.
Shouldn't it be made a rule? Because that's what we are governed by the rules of the NHA, and they haven't got it as a rule.
All right. I couldn't find a rule. I then spoke to Dr. Rob Crosley, and he then took it up with Dr. Dale Wheeler in Johannesburg, and we've established there is no rule related to epistaxis. But there is a rule that gives the veterinarian a right to suspend a horse based on a recommendation to the Stop-Henry stewards.
So the staff's suspended?
Correct.
But,
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah. So the vets can come along for any condition. Let's not talk about EIPH. It could be anything. And in their view, this horse may not race for X amount of time, and they'll recommend that to the staffs, and the staffs then apply that rule.
My problem, Ralph, is that there's no scientific proof that the X amount of time should be 3 months. Happens again, 6 months, and then you're barred for life. Every single second horse is bleeding. It's just a bad rule.
I think
or recommendation.
I think in view of what we're breeding and in view of the situation we're in, it needs to be looked at.
Ralph, thanks very, very much for your time. I hope it's cleared it up for a lot of people. There we go, Dr. Ralph Katzwinkel, who's done all this research, looked it up and found out exactly what is scientific about it. There's nothing scientific about it. Until next time.
Roses giving them a bath. That's one of the biggest minions I've ever seen. Grace Villana, the leader. Grace Villana has